Malcolm, good to see you. Thank you for doing an interview with the Kyiv Post.
My
For
pleasure.
thank you for coming. And for those who don't know you already, could you say a few words about your own background, how you got into this, and who you are?
Well, I'm Malcolm Nance, and I've until just recently been a member of the International Legion for the Territorial Defense of Ukraine from the very first days of the war. In fact, I have been in Ukraine for the last 10 months. I arrived a month before the war, where I was doing a study of the Russian order of battle and the lines of the invasion. If you don't know, I'm a member, let me rephrase that. I was with MSNBC and NBC News in the United States as the national security, counterterrorism, and intelligence analyst on national news in the United States for almost 7 years. And I've got into where we are today by leaving that job and joining the International Legion in order to help save Ukraine from the Russian invasion. I have almost 40 years in U.S. intelligence and the U.S. Naval Intelligence, 20 years in U.S. Naval Intelligence, and almost 17 years in U.S. National Security and Intelligence. I've worked all around the world. I'm a member of the a board of the International Spy Museum in the United States, where I'm actually an exhibit. And I have a very deep background in national security and warfare. With that, that's why I came to Ukraine and volunteered my time, my treasure, and my life, if need be, to help with Ukraine. So I've been in the Legion since the beginning, and actually all three branches of the Legion. That's working with the Defense Intelligence, the 1st Battalion, and 3rd Battalion International Legion.
What inspired you? Why did you decide to quit everything in the United States? You're a celebrity there, you're successful, you're making lots of money. Why would you quit all that to go to Ukraine? What was the point of that?
Yeah, in fact, the joke is that I'm paying Ukraine five digits salary per month to be in the Legion. And in fact, I love the organization, but I joined because in the pre-war, I met many people in Ukraine and saw and was reporting on the news that the entire perspective of the global media was wrong about how they were perceiving the Russian invasion, what they thought of the chances of Ukraine. And I was, in fact, one of the lone persons in media saying that, one, the Russian invasion will fail. Two, they will never take the city of Kyiv. I haven't said that very clearly. I have driven almost every road in Ukraine prior to that along the lines of where the Russians would have to go to invade. And it was pretty clear that most news media did not understand there was a Ukrainian army. And I had friends in the Ukrainian army. I made other friends in the Ukrainian army. There were people that I had met who were compatriots before the war. And so when the invasion started, I was receiving calls from a couple of them who were saying, "We're going to die in the next 24 hours. If there's anything you guys can do to help us, because this invasion is an onslaught." And when President Zelensky announced that he was creating the International Legion, I went right to Washington, got my interview at the embassy, the Ukrainian embassy in Washington, and was directed to report to Kyiv, where it was pretty clear that I was a very level personage, and they weren't going to just throw me in the infantry. So I went there and I started working with the Ministry of Defense and Defense Intelligence.
So you're really positive about the Foreign Legion. You have a lot of good things to say, but not everybody has an opinion. There's been a lot of allegations recently that there's been, for instance, weapons that have gone missing, especially weapons from NATO. And that's a pretty heavy allegation. I mean, what have you seen, though?
Well, I know the origins of all these stories. I know the Kyiv Independent did 2 stories, and they're really hit pieces. They are really poorly sourced. They think they have sources, but I know the sources are, and those sources have an agenda. And so I'm going to give a little balance to that story, to both stories. Many of the factors that they have in there are true. And there's a big difference between having facts that line up and give you a story and the truth. And this is where journalists fall into this trap. And trust me, I know that. I deal strictly in what we call ground truth, the intelligence facts as they appear and as they can be quantified. So, look, the International Legion is not an experiment. I was there from the ground. when it first broke. I was there in the background as it was developing, and I know all the players who were involved there. I know Colonel Bogdan Molchanov, the first commander of First Battalion, and this is a man he's a great character. He's quite a character, and in fact, there's a video clip with him talking there, which is completely taken out of context. But there were a lot of challenges at the beginning of the war. A lot of challenges. Look, I had fought in several major invasions, throughout the Middle East. Kuwait, Iraq, Libya. So there is always friction within that war and miscommunication and a lack of logistics and supplies. But that doesn't necessarily mean all the weapons are missing. Look, every battalion, and the 1st Infantry Battalion, the 3rd Special Forces Battalion of the International Legion, and the Defense Intelligence branch of the Legion, they all get allocations and got allocations according to the Ukrainian Army's specifications. You have to understand another thing. When that war was kicking off, you had 250,000 men in the field with the Ukrainian army. You had almost 500,000 reservists mobilizing, and everyone wanted a weapon. Everyone. And when the 1st Battalion Legion was stationed out in Rivne, one of the things that was alleged was that 54 M4 rifles were taken. The rifles that are out there that were sent have all been allocated out to the individual companies that were there. And the way that the Legion process worked is that you created an individual company. For example, Alpha Company. Alpha Company would plus up to about 80 people, and then they would move forward to the battlefront out in Kharkiv. Bravo Company would stay in Rivne. They would get their weapons and equipment and move out to the battlefront in Kharkiv. Then they developed Charlie Company. But while that was going on, Alpha Company was disintegrating because, unlike Ukrainian units, people who come in the International Legion can quit anytime. Unfortunately, we have a bad reputation for being people that will not stay to see the job through, that they'll quit because something's inconvenient. And that's sort of true. Most of the Legionnaires, the first week Legionnaires that I know that are still in the Legion today, are committed to the cause. Are there logistics problems? Yes, there were logistics problems. But you know what? All you got to do is follow the paperwork. If weapons are allocated to one company and another company doesn't see those weapons and that they get a completely different class of weapon, for example, the M4s that went to Alpha Company, well, Bravo Company got got M4s also, but Charlie Company got AKM rifles. That doesn't mean that the weapons are missing. You may or may not see things in the inventory. Will there always be pilferage in war? Yes. Every freaking war has pilferage. Yes. Do optics go missing? Yes. We've had stuff taken out of vehicles. Everyone was desperate in those first few months of the war. And as they were bringing up territorial defense units, they were more desperate for equipment. So, I know I supplied an entire platoon's worth of materials to the GUR, to the forces in defense intelligence and to the 1st Battalion Legion. There's never enough equipment. Also in this war, equipment gets consumed. That means broken, lost, and destroyed by enemy action. So this allegation, it's you can make that one allegation, but that's not the Legion. The Legion has hundreds of serving men and women who are serving honorably. You know what I'm not seeing from the Kyiv Independent? Any stories about the dozen or more dead Legionnaires who gave their life for Ukraine, the dozens of Legionnaires who have been wounded, the ones who have carried out operations with great heroism under the same commander. So, again, I really think that whole allegation is just that. It's an allegation. I didn't see any paperwork that the Kyiv Independent had. All I saw was somebody said these weapons were missing. Well, let me tell you something. We have more NATO weapons in some battalions than we know what to deal with. 1st Battalion has 50 caliber machine guns. 3rd Battalion doesn't, but they don't have the ammunition. They don't have the optics. What's happening is we're getting a flow of weapons, but often these weapons the supply chain hasn't been able to supply them right away with the ammunition that they need. You know why? Because the frontline Ukrainian brigades who are in contact with the enemy on a minute-to-minute basis are fighting and have been consuming those weapons and ammunition. So anyone who says this isn't getting NATO weapons aren't getting out there just doesn't understand the dynamics of warfare.
Well, I mean, it makes sense what you're saying about the weapons, but there's been other accusations that are a little bit stronger. For instance,
Sure.
Piotr Kapuscinski,
Like what?
he was considered to be a mobster back in Poland. He'd been arrested before, was involved in various organized crime things, and he was apparently involved in Legion. Did you know Piotr? And do you know anything about these allegations of this mob boss?
Well, I had heard these stories back in May. His nickname is Sasha, and Sasha was with the Defense Intelligence Branch of the Legion, operating out of Kyiv. I never had to work with him. The operations that I was carrying out had nothing to do with that branch. However, I had heard those accusations, but I only heard those accusations from one source. All right, and that source was the press spokesman for the guy named Damian McGrew. And he worked with a Brazilian officer who I know personally, who I personally interviewed as an intelligence officer on this very matter. But this matter is an issue for the SBU, for internal Ukrainian intelligence, counterintelligence to deal with. It's not for the Kiev. I mean, I think it's great that the Kiev Independent is being forthright and saying, hey, we have problems in Ukraine. But you know what? The Legion's efforts in the country far eclipse this one man. And he is an issue for defense intelligence and the internal security at the Ministry of Internal Affairs to handle if those allegations are true. And if they are true, you're right, he shouldn't be working there. I heard about the stories of the orders to steal things in Severodonetsk. I heard those stories from the very individuals who claimed them. That requires investigation. But it doesn't require doing the Russians' job of smearing the International Legion while they're fighting in combat. I mean, it's great journalism, sensational journalism, but it's not changing anything. What it's really doing, it's helping, it's helping undermine the true efforts, the heroism of the other legionnaires who I see no reporting from the Kiev Independent about. And one other thing, the press spokesman for the International Legion at that time, Damien, and his assistant, Emiz Fiak, also known as Mockingjay, are the only two legionnaires to never have taken any combat training. Why? Because those two are hiding or were hiding in Kiev, and they're smearing the rest of the Legion. These two have nothing to do with the International Legion. There are a couple of frauds. Mockingjay is actually a documented, wanted international financial crime fraud con artist, and she's up there running the press operations for the Legion. This is why we are operating in disgrace, because you have disgraceful people who are the sources for these stories, who put you in touch with other people who give you those little dots of fact, but don't actually complete the truth.
So, what do you think the motivation is here? Why would they smear the Legion if they themselves are part of the Legion?
I'm sorry, Damien and Mockingjay were never part of the Legion, ever. Listen, Mockingjay in her first week in the Legion was accused of espionage. She was taking photographs after the Yavoriv airstrike and was arrested for a short period of time. She was released into Damien's care. And those two have been stuck together ever since. And they have been misusing their positions in the Legion. Damien appointed himself press spokesman. He was never chosen by the Legion. And for months, he was operating in Yavoriv and then in Kiev like he ran the Legion, working with his friends in President Zelensky's office, working with the members of parliament, supposedly to help the Legion. But you know what he really spent most of his time doing? Trying to undermine the Defense Intelligence Branch of the Legion. I sent in a counterintelligence report about these two directly to the Ministry of Defense because I have my own suspicions about what they were trying to do. 99.9% of the time, the people who are misguided and are doing ridiculous things are doing them for their own personal benefits. But, these things really oriented at damaging Ukraine's defense intelligence special Legion program. And that made me very, very suspicious. And, I'm not going to speculate any further in public about what they're doing, but it's under investigation. All I know is that the Legion office in Kiev has never helped the 1st Battalion or the 3rd Battalion Legion or the GER Legionnaires. They are there for themselves, hanging out in the city, hanging out with the press, drinking and smoking hash, but they are not there to help the Legion. There does not need to be a press officer in Kiev. The Legion Coordination Office in the land warfare headquarters is nothing but a hiding place, for at least two people to have avoided the war. And I know that because they told me personally this is why they got the assignment in Kiev. They did not want to go out to 1st Battalion and take part in combat.
Well, so listen, not everything can be so perfect, though, in the Foreign Legion. I imagine there are problems. It's an upstart operation. What would you say, I mean, in contrasting your decades of experience with the military, U.S. military especially, highly disciplined U.S. military, what would you say is lacking in the Foreign Legion of Ukraine? Or where do you see it falling short, where it is open to a legitimate criticism?
Well, there's a lot of places where you can give legitimate criticism, but you have to understand the Legion is 10 months, not even, it's 9 months old. It's not a particularly, well-grounded organization. It's the experience, it's the bravery, the camaraderie of the hundreds and hundreds of Legionnaires that are making the Legion what it is. It still draws people in from all over the world. Look, when I made my statement globally on April 19th, there was very well known amongst the Ministry of Defense what was going to happen, because there were articles in the news media saying the Legion was actually a fake organization, that it didn't exist, and that it wasn't, on paper, it had no manpower, no equipment, and that it was just a propaganda technique for President Zelensky. It is not. These are men and women who have come from all over the world, have risked their lives. I gladly risked my life for Ukraine. I love Ukraine. I have brothers in 3rd Battalion and 1st Battalion who have died in defense of Ukraine. Are there going to be baby step screw-ups? Yes, it was massively screwed up in the first couple of weeks, but by the time it smoothed out in April, things were moving along pretty well. Are there incidents that can happen? Are there individuals within there who may be looking out for themselves? Yes. Here's where the Legion Commission, of which there is in Parliament, can really assist. I made a proposal back in May, which was forwarded by the press secretary of the Legion at that time, that the Legion needed to be turned into a light regiment, given a Ukrainian major general. Right now, there are 2 independent colonels, and needs to allow them to have special commissioning of foreign personnel to become the officers. Right now, we have Ukrainian officers, and I love my Ukrainian officers. I've seen nothing but bravery out of the ones that I work for. But there is that ability to manage NATO forces that's missing from other NATO forces. We had people who were in the rank of colonel in foreign forces who had the rank of private in the International Legion. There needs to be a more structured chain of command that allows the Westerners to have not just the title of sergeant and 1st sergeant and sergeant major, but the actual rank and pay that's equal to the Ukrainian army. What you will get is more loyalty. You will get less people quitting and running around the country trying to find some unit where they can do it the way they want. The Legion is a fine organization, but it has screw-ups. It has individuals who are, unfit for service. There's a lot of them have showed up over the 10 months that I was there. But you know what? The people who were really competent, we have lost some just recently. It breaks my heart. Some of the fine personnel that we lost in 1st Battalion and 3rd Battalion just this week, who dedicated their life to defending Ukraine. And those little tiny screw-ups, maybe a corrupt sergeant down here, or a person who's unfit over there, that does not cancel out what the Legion really is, which is an effective fighting force.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your service to both the United States and to Ukraine. It was great talking to you, Malcolm.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.